imbogadzira bridge revakadzi kana rinodarika nengoro chete. So toti bridge rakagadzirwa nanamai Muzanenamwe, mai Muzanenamo namai Chipikiri namai Matapiri vakabata mafochoro vakagadzira bridge. Toti madzimai aenzana nevarume. So you see that most of these feminist arguments are not based on substance. They are based on sensationalizing gender to make it a very important matter when it is not. And this is why we are against the idea of village women teaching young girls sexual moves as they are preparing them to go to their husbands. Unororwa nemukomana asingazive anything, otanga kumudzidzisa iwewe kuti zvinoitwa sei. Obva agumbukira izvozvo, obva atori joki dzokera kumba kwenyu. Unoita sei? Now we are comparing how Cain and Abel were born and how Seth were born, for you to realize that Adam had actually divorced his wife in Genesis chapter 3 verse 20 when he gave her the name Eve.
Ora, 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 ora. Ndabuda mdaini, ndaloka madozi, ndapita machira, ndapeza kuyabota, nawo zangu zinotanga ndiri pambeda, tose kumba ndatoita meta. Ora, ora. I
pray that the Lord may give you understanding tonight. I really do. Genesis chapter 2 verse 23. What did Adam say when Adam got married?
And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones."
Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones,
and flesh of my flesh.
Yes.
She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man."
Right. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of men. Have you realized that the etymological construction of in the English language has actually proven that God never wanted women to consider themselves able to thrive in an environment where they are in charge without men themselves, even though the woke movement is vehemently against the dominance of men or the domination of men in the society of the present day 21st century world. But I've often met these feminists and spoken to them. I don't like arguing with them because I do not find feminism as a very strong argument. I consider it a very loud argument and not a very logical argument. I'll give you 3 examples. Example number 1, ladies argue that the industries of today are male-dominated, but the constitutions of the first century nations have been modified, they've been repealed, they've been redrafted, they've been amended to provide for the equality of men and women. But you realize that even until today, men and women in most cases do not earn the same salaries, and also men and women are not proportionally represented in the industries. For example, naturally, ordinarily, without looking at other factors, statistically speaking, 52% of the world's population is made up of women, 48% is made up of men, notwithstanding that of those 48% of men, 14% are either in prison or they are serving a certain community service somewhere. The male-female representation in any industry does not portray that women are 52% in the world. you find that industries are occupied mostly by men, especially in senior management position, than women. And then this is what women are complaining against. We need to have equal number of managers at every company, which are female as much as we have male ones. Parliaments are now being changed. They want equal number of female MPs to be in parliament as they are men. I find that a wild goose chase, because once we are concerned about numbers, we are going to bring garbage into the parliament. We need competence and not gender to be the most determining factor in who shall represent the people. What if 90% of the women have better methods of improving the nation and not 50%? So these quota systems are not really going to foster any development. These are political propagandist ideologies which are not going to bring any development. But the question I've said to one of the women that I spoke to when I was flying some few months ago, I said to her, okay, instead of arguing that our industries are male-dominated, why don't you women start your own industries? Because these industries you are claiming to be male-dominated, you are refusing to be facing the truth. The truth is that these industries are not male-dominated. They are male-established. They were established by men. How many big corporations do you know that were started by women? Instead of coming to a company that was started by a man and demanding that this man must employ equal number of women to the number of male employees, why do you not start your own companies as women, your own industries as women, and say we are going to make sure that our companies are only manned by women? Which road do you know was constructed by women? Which building do you know was built by women? Which car do you know was invented by a woman? So you are not competent in this area, you are just loudmouths. The truth is, there is no country that is stopping women from starting their own companies. Start your own companies and employ females. My company, I only employ women. There is no one who will say, men will never start a movement to say, we want to ask those companies to employ men as well. There are no men who are going to be that lousy and that lazy. You can't start anything. That's the truth. Imbogadzira bridge revakadzi kana rinodarika nengoro chete so toti bridge rakagadzirwa nana mai muzane nhamo here. Mai muzane nhamo namai chipikiri namai matapiri vakabata mafochoro vakagadzira bridge toti madzimai aenzana nevarume. So you see that most of these feminist arguments are not based on substance. They are based on sensationalizing gender to make it a very important matter when it is not. But let's leave this one. I just wanted to digress a little bit. Now, I said the etymological construction in the English language is actually something that echoes the sentiments of the Bible in terms of the role of women in the society. In every word that describes a woman in the English language, almost every word, that word comes out from men. There is no woman without men.
Yes.
There is no female without male.
Yes.
There is no she without he.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yes, am I?
In the word woman is the word man.
Man.
In the word female, there is the word male.
Male.
In the word she, there is a he. This is not a coincidence. It is based on Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. So, this very marriage institution we are talking about has been torn into pieces. Us, the true church, are starting afresh right now to pick up the pieces of the incinerated institution of the marriage, to piece it up together and reconstruct it again from scratch. Because the marriage between Adam and the woman was not only officiated by God, it was initiated by God. Actually, God did not speak to Adam, I will make you an helpmeet for you. If you look at verse 18, God was not speaking to Adam, God was speaking to himself. God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him. This is a monologue.
Yes.
Where God is speaking to himself.
Yes.
If he was talking to Adam, God would have said, I will make you an helpmeet for you. So God made the woman, and then God woke up Adam. And in verse 22, God presented the woman before the man. In verse 22, God played the role of a marriage officer. I present unto you your wife. As soon as Adam stood up, he opened his eyes and looked at what beautiful the woman stood before her was. And he said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. The first name of a lady in the world was not given by her father. It was given by her husband. And this is something that we will take ages to teach our women. Now, I of course know your first name.
Yes.
And if you were to look at yourself from the lenses of Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, you would say, so if God was your father, just like the woman, she could call God father, meaning origin,
Yes.
not as in paternal a parent.
Yes.
The word father does not just mean parent, it also means origin. So the woman's father was God in Genesis chapter 2, verse 22 and 23. And so your biological father called you Nyaradzo, and then your father presents you to your husband. And that very moment, your husband says, no, she is not Nyaradzo, she is my Mauti. You understand?
Yes, amen.
And then we now have a conflict. We have a conflict between whoever raised you, because when your parents gave you a name, they did not give you just a name. They gave you an identity. Yes. They gave you value systems. They gave you a character. They gave you expectations. They shaped your destiny in some greater part. But God did not do any of that. God did not spend a minute with Adam's wife. As soon as the woman was made, immediately God presented her to her husband. So all that Eve knows until the day she died, she learned it, all of it, from her husband. So God is that kind of a father who could not even name his daughter in court. He said, the husband will do that. I don't want to give anything to this woman. I want this man to take this woman raw. So in simple terms, God gave Adam a blank book, the first written message in this book was written by the husband. God wrote nothing in the woman. So this is the marriage that Christ is intending to do with his church, making sure we have nothing that we know from elsewhere but from himself, our husband. But our women are not raised like that. You have to convince your wife that you are now my wife. Some of the things that your parents taught you, I may not tolerate them here. And so instead of God to allow that to happen, God simply said, I don't want to teach this woman anything. Let her learn everything from her husband. Imagine Adam telling his wife, what God teach you, I don't like it. Ignore what God said and take what I had said to you. Or someone might say, but Apostle, what is this now? Let us read verse 10, 1 Timothy 2:10. But which becomes women professing godliness with good works. Verse 11, let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence.
For Adam was first formed, then Eve.
Let's leave it there. So Paul was taking this from the very chapter I'm showing you. That is chapter 2 of Genesis. Mwari haana kana kudzidzisa Eva prayer. Achingopedza kugadzira mukadzi, akanomupa murume asina chaakanga amudzidzisa. So there is a possibility of a conflict between what women are required to do by their husbands and what they were taught to do by their parents. That conflict is artificial. If that happens, it means whoever raised that woman failed. Because a parent must tell his child, whatever we are teaching you is to protect you until you get married. When you get married, you are going to take a new doctrine from your husband. That is the only way you can live in that house. If you don't listen to your husband because of what we have taught you, you will fail your marriage. So one of God's ways of preserving and protecting Adam's marriage with his wife is that God did not teach the woman anything. Mm-hmm. And this is why we are against the idea of village women teaching young girls sexual moves as they are preparing them to go to their husbands. Unororwa nemukomana asingazive anything, otanga kumudzidzisa iwewe kuti zvinoitwa sei. Obva agumbukira izvozvo, obva atori joki dzokera kumba kwenyu. Unoita sei? I do not allow the woman to teach her husband. God was clear in 2 Timothy, in 1 Timothy chapter 2. But let's not go back there. That's not the purpose of this message. This message is focusing on something very important. So verse number 23 of Genesis chapter 2 tells us two things. Number one, what is this woman called? What is this person called? Adam says she is called woman because she was taken out of man. So if your question was, what is the name of Adam's wife? The correct answer is not Eve. The correct answer is woman. What is the name of Adam's wife? The correct answer is not Eve. The correct answer is woman. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17.
And unto Adam he said,
After they ate the forbidden fruit, God spoke to Adam.
Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife,
Yes.
and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life.
So in Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, God is angry because Adam listened to the voice of his wife. Highlight that part which says, because thou hast listened to the voice of thy wife. I love that, I love that, I love that. Let us highlight those words and let us juxtapose them with 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11. Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. Rather, let's do it with verse 12. But I do not allow a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the men, but to be in silence. Where did Apostle Paul take this message from? He took it from Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife, who has taught you something, the woman taught her husband how to eat the forbidden tree. So we can make an adjustment of this nature the day the woman taught the men against the order created by God. Only that which God had forbidden was what she could teach the woman, the men. The only things that the woman could teach the men are those things that God had forbidden. Zvinhu zvega zvinogona kudzidziswa murume nemunhukadzi zvinhu zvakarambidzwa naMwari. My Mautsi, how do you feel about that? That each time you try to teach your husband something, you are teaching him what God has forbidden.
Yeah, now that you've explained it in this manner, just juxtaposing Genesis 3:17 and 1 Timothy 2:12, I feel much more need to be of silence.
Yes. So Paul said, if only Adam had refused to be taught by his wife, the woman, all this trouble we are in today could not have happened. All right, let's leave it. So God said, because you have listened to your wife, the following things will happen. Number one, cursed is the ground for your sake. In sorrow shall you eat of it all the days of your life. Number two, thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Number three, in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. Number four, you shall return to the ground from where you were taken. So 4 things, 4 calamities, 4 disastrous circumstances and outcomes that befell upon the man because he listened to his wife. So Adam is cursed because he listened to his wife. But this is the very reason women are now saying our men are authoritarians. The complaint number 1 from women is that our men do not listen to us. Ukasangana nevanhu vasingawirirane murume nemukadzi kazhinji kacho chiri panumber 1 pamacomplaints emukadzi ndechekuti murume wangu handiteerere. Muri kuona kuti world yedu yapidiguka. But are we saying everything that women say should never be listened to? Of course not. The matters that Adam was not supposed to listen to his wife on were matters to do with what his purpose was in this world. The man was designed to serve God. The purpose of a man and the boundaries of man's operations are governed by God. Concerning these two, purpose and operations, the woman had no clue. This is the area that the man should not listen to his wife on. All right. So this is what happened. The man falls into a lot of predicaments because he has listened to his wife, whose name at this point is still woman. Verse number 20.
And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living.
Did you see that? So in verse 20, Adam decides to change the name of his wife. In verse 23, he said, she shall be called woman. In verse 20 of chapter 3, he then says, she shall be called Eve, because she shall be the mother of all the living. In case you have not understood this, what Adam meant there was based on what God had pronounced to Eve in verse 16. Because when you listen to what God said to Adam, it's in verse 17, 18, 19. But what God said to the woman is in verse 16. So throughout God's conversation with Adam, God never mentioned children. Actually, at the climax of God's anger towards the man, God pronounced death upon the man in verse 19. But when God spoke to the woman in verse 16, he said, I'll greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children. So concerning children, God never spoke to Adam. Concerning children, God only spoke to the woman.
Yes.
Which means God excluded Adam in childbearing. God said, when it comes to children, I will talk to your wife. As far as you are concerned, your portion is, I've cursed the ground, you shall eat in sorrow, you shall sweat for your bread, you shall die. These are the four things God spoke to men about. So Adam is now summarizing the whole situation. In verse 20, when he looks at his wife, he realizes what God has said about me is I'm going to die. That is what is left of me to become. As far as continuity, procreation, regeneration is concerned, it is the woman who shall give birth to children. I'm not involved. So Adam understands that God's plan towards mankind does not involve men anymore. Genesis chapter 3 verse 20 is where Adam admitted, I'm no longer involved in the birth of children. God will never use me again.
Yes.
God has decided to use the woman. And this is why he wants to come out of the equation. The name the woman carried in verse 23 of Genesis chapter 2 was based on the man. Woman, because thou art taken from a man. But because God now excluded the man in the childbearing story, Adam wants to take away his name from this woman. So you are no longer going to be called woman because your childbearing purpose has nothing to do with me. I'm taking back my name. I'm giving you a new one. You shall be called Eve because you shall be the mother of all the living. So Adam withdraws himself from this woman, which looks like a divorce. This is why I'm here, brethren. Genesis chapter 3 verse 20, Adam divorced his wife. You are no longer called Mrs. Adam. You are no longer called out of men. You are now called something else. Nothing to do with you. I've got nothing to do with you whatsoever. You shall be called Eve because you are the mother of all the living. So Adam pulls back, claims back, takes back his name, woman, because thou art taken from man. But digging deeper into verse 20, you will sense anger in Adam if you compare it with Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. By the way, these scriptures are very strategically positioned. Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. Think about it. So Adam said, you are taken from men, you shall be called woman. Taken from men, it simply means you are learning from me, you are taking from me, you are coming after me, you are taking after me, you are learning from me, you are following after me. I am proud that I am the reason why you are here. I am proud that you are my first achievement. The first achievement of Adam was that he managed to produce something that delighted him. So in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, Adam was euphoric, Adam was ecstatic, Adam was super excited. But in Genesis 3:20, Adam was angry. Now I am no longer involved. You and God shall come up with a plan to give birth to children. I don't want you to carry my name anymore. So he says, you shall be called Eve because you are the mother of all the living. I don't know if you can sense the differences in Adam's emotions between Genesis 2:23 and Genesis 3:20. In Genesis 2:23, there's excitement in Adam. In Genesis 3:20, there's sulking, there's anger, there's regret in Adam. So this woman called Eve is a woman who represents Adam's disillusionment, disenfranchisement, Adam's disapproval, Adam's regrets, and Adam's self-doubt, self-blame. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have listened to this woman. So those who love the word Eve are not understanding what gave birth to Eve. This woman is no longer a bona fide wife of Adam. She is no longer a bona fide wife of Adam.
Yeah.
So they remained husband and wife. But that was just ceremoniously. In his heart, Adam had stopped loving this woman because of what had happened between verse 8 and verse 24 of Genesis chapter 3. He did not chase her away. They continued staying together. But the coming in of the word Eve represents Adam's displeasure in his marriage. Genesis chapter 4, verse 1.
And Adam knew Eve, his wife.
Adam knew his wife.
And she conceived.
And she got pregnant.
And bare Cain.
She gave birth to Cain.
And said.
And Adam said,
I have gotten a man from the Lord.
Yes.
And she again bare his brother Abel.
Let's leave it there. We all know what happened between Cain and Abel. But before I go into the birth of Seth, I wanted you to know that Adam lost both these two children for the simple reason that they are illegitimate children, Abel and Cain, because they are not children of Adam. They are children of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Genesis chapter 5, verse 1 to 2.
This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created.
So Adam and his wife were called Adam. And this is why the word woman is not a proper noun. It's a descriptive word. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Because of Genesis 5 verse 2, God called male and female Adam. So this is why in verse 24 of Genesis 2, God says, they shall become one flesh, which means they can't take two identities. That's why Adam never gave a proper name. He simply said, she shall be called woman. In this case, Adam was describing the anatomical differences between himself and the woman. He wanted you to know that what he was given as a wife does not really look like what he is in all aspects of his physiology and his biology. So, Adam gave birth to Cain and Abel. But this is after Adam had already rejected his woman and gave her a name that represents his disapproval of this woman. And this is why the scripture says Abel was killed by Cain, and Cain was excommunicated from the presence of God, which means after the birth of Cain and Abel, Adam lost both of them. He lost Abel through murder. He lost Cain through banishment. God cursed Cain, and God chased Cain away from where the family had settled. This is in Genesis chapter 4, verse 16 says, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. You can read this passage from verse number 1. Cain was banished from the presence of the Lord. Abel died. So vana vakaberekwa na Adam na Eva vese vakafa. Eventually, all the Cain generation was raised out of the face of the earth in the Noah flood. As we speak today, there is not a single human being who carries the genes of the blood of Cain. God raised, eradicated, exterminated all the children of Cain because of what Cain had done by killing Abel. So whenever Adam na Eva vakafa vese. Verse 3, Genesis 5.
And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and he called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years.
All right. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. So believers, this is where we shall end this message, a very exciting message. Adam lived 130 years and then begat a son in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth. What a marvelous scripture. Today, we shall realize that you still need to learn how to read the scriptures. Let's go again. Now we are comparing how Cain and Abel were born and how Seth were born, for you to realize that Adam had actually divorced his wife in Genesis chapter 3 verse 20 when he gave her the name Eve.